Today I tested my Technogym wellness age. I came out as 24, which is minus 4 years from my actual age of 28. There are different categories. One is mobility, one is balance, one is mind, one is strength, cardio and body. And overall, then, this is 24 in my case. I started out by standing on this in-body scale, which also has handles, which are now compared to a home scale to also let a current through the upper body, so therefore it should be more accurate. The results came out as weight 80.7 kg, BMI 24.7, and a basal metabolic rate of 1997, which apparently is good. I got a score of 89 out of 100, total body water was 67%, and the body fat mass was 6.7%, which I barely believe because on my Garmin Index S2 I measured in the morning, and therefore it is kind of more accurate because here I did do assault biking before, so this has to be taken with a grain of salt. Since the blood was in my muscles, and therefore it probably determined the lean mass a little bit higher, I would say. Next up, I did the mobility tests. This is the Technogym Wellness Hub. I previously had experience with the eGym Hub, which is very similar. It tested for shoulders. One had to put the arms behind the head, then the neck, basically moving from side to side, then the hips, basically a stretch, toe stretch, and then the ankles, which also measured the hip flexibility. I took all tests. It was a camera, or rather an array of cameras, which can be seen here. Then I had to stand in a certain area, and then in this case I had to step back until you reach the red indicated area on the screen. It then guided me through the tests, and I got a 26 out of 100, which is terrible. So neck mobility 49 degrees, not Celsius and Fahrenheit, but just degrees. Shoulder mobility excellent. Then we have hip flexion 70 degrees, ankle mobility also poor. Next up, I did the mind test, and here I was surprised to see that on this big touchscreen in my gym I could do a brain speed test, which is basically a reaction speed test, I assume, and then it also would measure my attention and my memory. But it was also the end of the day. I actually intended to do all 3 tests, but it guided me through one, and then I basically just already got a score, and so I did not do the other tests because I didn't see them. What I had to do was there were 3 leaves and they appeared, and then I had to click the 2 ones that are identical. It got increasingly faster, to the end at least, and I got a mind score of 99 out of 100, which probably means my IQ is above 430. This seems to be a simple reaction time test, as also recommended in Brian Johnson's Don't Die app. I downloaded this app, so this was recommended by Brian Johnson's Don't Die app, in which I also can get a BioAge, but I currently do not have it downloaded since it also includes social media, which I cannot have on my phone. I just wanted to show you this in comparison. So here one basically taps with the usually with the thumb, basically on this thing here, and then it determines a reaction time, which in my case is always terrible. So the best I could get it to was, after these 5 attempts, to maybe 250 milliseconds. So I was quite surprised to see that here I got 43 milliseconds. Maybe this is a little bit different. The game seems to be a little bit different, and also I had to remember basically these different things. It also plotted a graph, and it also showed me that mine was excellent. Maybe I also just had luck, I don't know. Then there was one thing left, the balance. There were actually 2 things left, but I will go through these later on. Now the balance test is also kind of already implemented in Brian Johnson's Don't Die app, which is standing on one leg as long as one can. Now I did try this, and I got 600 seconds, and then I just stopped, at least in the test which I did for Brian Johnson's Don't Die app. Here, the test is actually a little bit different. It shows a timer with 20 seconds, and then in the middle of one's body there is a target, and if one wobbles back and forth, one kind of misses the target, and then it determines the time so the time I spent basically within the target. But since I only got this with the target, basically I saw this only as the test was already finished, so therefore I couldn't optimize for the target. I got a 41 out of 100. And in total, this loaded my wellness age to 24. And now I could get a workout plan to reduce my wellness age. I already checked this out. It seems to be not particularly great. Or let's just say it like this. I have 2 things which are missing. So the first one is the cardio, and the second one is the strength. In terms of cardio, research is usually using VO2max as kind of a proxy for overall fitness. And very luckily, a couple of weeks ago, I already did a VO2 max test on the elliptical. I previously attempted a VO2 max test on the Technogym bike. It's called the Excite bike, but there it did not really work, so I could not really pedal as hard as I would want to without basically getting the cadence too high, so basically I could not really put in effort. I then tried on the elliptical, and on the elliptical it worked. So here I now have a 52.2. It was a sub-maximal test, and I also did it basically after my workout. My Garmin watch says that I have a cycling VO2 max of 56, but this has been, basically I did this on an assault bike, so therefore it's not accurate because usually it's without handles, at least the cycling VO2 max, and my running VO2 max estimate is currently 57. So it seems at least somewhat close. I got a 77 out of 100, which is also not that particularly great. In terms of strength now, there are additional machines which I do not have access to because I am not subscribed to the premium subscription in my gym, but I just have the basic one. I actually assumed that I could not even do these other tests, but they worked. So I also can do, so what I can do in my gym is do 1 rep max tests on the normal gym machines. So these in my gym actually have also a screen, a very small screen, but I can do 1 rep max tests. And I think this is where that 1 abdominal crunch set is from. So I think I did a 1 rep max test, or I did recently basically perform this set. In the previous gym I went to, there was the eGym BioH, which is also very similar, but it does not have integrated VO2 max test, at least not in my gym. I think they work with Matrix machines, with some Matrix machines, but in my gym they were not possible. So I entered them manually from Garmin basically. So one can also add blood pressure here, resting heart rate, and so on and so forth. I actually can show you what it looks like in the app. So this previous gym I went to is Fitness First, and my BioH here is 27, and now I also have different categories, and they are also available in the app, which I will shortly check out whether they are also available in the Technogym app. But what I also have to mention is that here in the previous gym I had the top tier subscription, in which I also had access to these machines, and currently I do not have access to these additional machines. So now upper body, for example, the eGym chest press looks like this. It's not a picture of the chest press, but you can see that there are these different values. So these are all 1 rep max tests. One can also enter manually basically the different other things, like I can do as many push-ups as I can do, and then I can also enter these in here. I can also do leg curls, for example, or ball ham curls, and then can additionally add this value, which is also then included in the calculation. I then get basically different ages for my core, for my lower body and my upper body, and I also get a muscle balance analysis, which is also quite nice, I have to say. What is not possible in here is, so there is also the eGym Hub, which also measures the flexibility very similarly, but there is a stick. And then we also have the metabolic age is basically almost the same, identical in-body scale. Then the cardio age is here, resting heart rate, blood pressure, VO2 max, but all of these have to be entered manually. So there are also the smart strength machines from eGym, which is now not Technogym, but that's kind of the only other system I at least was able to access or test. And so these are what the machines look like. You basically go into these machines, you log in, and then basically everything is automatically determined. There is also a circuit in which one can change from machine to machine. Now, because the gym I currently go to, Cleverfit, has both Technogym as well as eGym in some locations, I actually went to a different location recently, and I was able to update my eGym BioH, and for this, basically now both are up to date. On a Sunday, usually, or yeah, on a Saturday, I update basically these values in here. So I take the weekly resting heart rate average from Garmin, the blood pressure is the daily blood pressure from Garmin because there is no average, and the VO2 max estimate is the running estimate from Garmin. And then I enter them all into here basically, and the strength I can currently update maybe once a month when I make it to this other gym, which is in a bigger city nearby. And then I can also update the flexibility. What I seem to not be able to update is basically the in-body scale, and therefore the metabolism is not updated. What I could do is I could update basically with the body fat data I have from my Garmin Index S2, which I have to say I prefer anyway. The reason for this is that this is more standardized. I do this, basically I weigh myself every single morning after I stand up and I went to the bathroom. So therefore this is way more reliable data, even though the Garmin Index S2 goes up and down a little bit. So I can take the average, for example, my yearly body fat average, and we can see that this is now 15.5%. And I can say, okay, my average yearly weight is almost. So it's 78 kilogram, and my yearly average body fat is 15.5%. And since there seems to be a fluctuation, as you can kind of see in this very badly drawn graph now from me, but also if I go a year back, this is now not a year back, but let's go again to body fat, and then let's go to the last year. Does not work. Probably because the body fat is only basically this year, because I only had the scale about, or I got it about a year ago, I think. So let's see if there is something similar in the Cleverfit Technogym app. So the Technogym, so there are basically companies that make apps for gyms, which then often are also with these solutions. So the current gym I go to is called Cleverfit, and they basically have Technogym, at least in the gym I go to. They also sometimes work with eGym, and possibly also sometimes with LiveFit machines. But the question is then, who has the best integrated system that also now includes this overall BioAge? Now, previously, this is now nice. This is very nice, because this is actually what I wanted. And in terms of planning, I have to say that the Technogym app is almost a little bit better compared to the other one. I can do here basically a completely automated VO2 max test. I can go to my gym. I can basically just go onto a elliptical and then do a VO2 max test. The same is true for the treadmill, which also has the VO2 max test, and also the Stairmaster. I now do have a wellness age, and it's basically in my wellness passport. I also previously had my favorites, so now I have the FatMass, which is now imported from Garmin Connect, which was not possible in the eGym app and is not possible in the eGym app. So the FatMass, this is now actually a kind of a question. So the current date is now this March 16th, and the question is now whether the Garmin data has been overwritten. And I assume this is the case because this is the same 6.7% we saw basically before in the measurement. Now, I did want to try this, but since I now do have this value in here, I would actually prefer if this value now went out of existence, because previously I did have my Garmin body fat data in here, which I preferred. And also this other data is now 16.2%, and this is now, 6.7%. So let's check on, this here, and let's see if I can delete this. And I can. In the eGym app, this is not possible. So I probably will not take these in-body measurements any longer, because they are so unreliable. It's not that they inherently would be more unreliable or less reliable compared to my Garmin NXS2. It is just that the time I arrive in the gym always varies. The gym opening times vary. So basically on a weekend, I cannot go to the same time as during the week because the opening times are different. And so therefore I am sometimes a little bit more hydrated. Sometimes I have eaten before. Sometimes I just went to the bathroom before. And so therefore, and sometimes I cannot get it in before the workout, and then I do a measurement after the workout. I try to standardize this as good as I could possibly get it or do it, and I try to basically do one weekly measurement. I sometimes went actually faster to the gym to also have kind of a morning, but of course if I go faster to the gym just to then have a standardized measurement, then afterwards the workout is not as good because I'm fasted. And for the workout, it would be better if I already had eaten maybe 1 to 2 hours before. And so for this reason, I kind of do not really put trust into these in-body scale measurements, mostly because I cannot really standardize them as well. And what I now additionally have in here is HRV. This is just from Garmin, and this is the data that is basically imported, automatically pulled in from Garmin. I also now do have VO2 max, which unfortunately is not automatically pulled in from Garmin. I only have these two values in here. The first one was 38.5, which was the kind of failed Technogym VO2 max test, which I could just delete because, well, it did not do anything. But it seems that I cannot delete this here compared to the other one, which I seemingly can delete. So if I go on all data, then there are not these 3 dots which were here before, at least in the other data set. Maybe if I would ask in a gym, they could maybe delete it. Then, okay, we already had VO2 max. These are just my favorites. Then I also have muscle mass, which is now also, there is basically a value which is March 25. Let's see all data. Let's see if the data is actually quite similar to basically the one I have on, let's see if this is, can I actually see if this is a Garmin measurement? I can see, okay, I can see 34.2 kilograms. And if I now go into the Garmin app and I can see of today, I do have 34.2 kilograms. So it seems to be the case that skeletal muscle mass was not calculated in the in-body measurement, but that this is just the data from my Garmin NXS2, and I measured myself as every day in the morning, so I also do have a measurement. Of course, if I'm traveling, I cannot get onto my Garmin NXS2. Then I do also have body fat mass, and this is now also something I would want to take a look at, and these are just my favorites. these are basically the values out of the ones I had, which I think would incentivize myself to do basically more optimal training in the long term. And so I wanted to have the absolute body fat mass and not just the relative, because otherwise if I increase my muscle mass and also maybe in the short term kind of increase it with creatine intake, for example, then it's kind of polluted. At least the value is polluted, but the body fat mass, the absolute, would not be. But of course, again, it is determined by basically relative body fat mass, because it measures the body fat and then divides it by the lean mass, not the lean mass, but the lean mass plus basically the overall mass. Now, in terms of performance, what is shown here is basically the VO2 max. Then in terms of balance, what is shown here is the balance index, which is now basically the score out of 100 from the measurement I previously took. Then we also can see that I do have, so on the right, I apparently had 7.0 seconds in the target zone, and on the left 10.2. But again, I did not really realize that there was a target I should hit. In terms of the brain speed, this is now basically kind of similar to Brian Johnson's Don't Die app. It gives me an overall wellness age similar to Brian Johnson's Don't Die app. It's just that it is not all at-home measurements, but it's actually like kind of proper measurements that somebody thought out and that I can do, and I can also get advice from the trainer in the gym and so on and so forth. So this seems to be, at least of currently, I would say almost better than the eGym BioAge. And therefore kind of the best BioAge system that is kind of a well-integrated system, because it also includes kind of reaction time tests, which I can do on the eGym hub in my, not the eGym hub, but the Technogym hub in my gym. Now we can also see the mobility, and so I can see these different angles. What is a little bit better in the eGym app, I would say. So let's compare this here, for example. Okay, it's like 70 degrees. That's nice. What does this mean? I don't know. If I go to the eGym app in this case, then I can go on to flexibility, and then it says, okay, this is low, this is good, this is bad. And so this is, I think, much better done. I mean, the other one is also nice because it is dark mode, but here I do have an interpretation. And the interpretation on the Technogym app is also there, but only on the Technogym hub. So here it did show me poor, excellent, and so on and so forth, but in the app it does not copy this interpretation. Let's go on to body composition and see if there are now additional values. So it says total body water. I don't know if any of these was not here before, based on metabolic rate. Extracellular water, I think, was not here. Intracellular water was also not here. Bone mass, I don't know. We can actually just check it out and see if there are data entries before. So this is apparently from Garmin, as there are also data points before. Soft lean mass, what is this? I have no idea. Biospace in body, 570. What is my soft lean mass? There is also no information what this is. Okay, bone mineral content, 4.33. So this is now something that it would be similar to bone mineral. So basically bone, what was the bone weight, total skeletal muscle mass, body fat. Wasn't there something from Garmin? Bone mineral content, muscle mass, soft lean mass, visceral fat. Oh, I also now have protein. I also now have minerals, 5.2 kilogram of minerals, body cell water, obesity degree 110%. This is very good. This seems to be not very nice. 110% obesity degree. Okay, so maybe I should lose body fat. But it also said I have 6.7% body fat. I don't know. FFM control. Okay, 0.C, BFM control. Weight control, in-body score. It's 93. Okay, that is nice. I could also add this, what is the growth score? I don't know. And it also gives me absolutely no information on what this is. Fat-free mass, percent of right leg compared. This is now actually something the eGym interpretation also gives me. So it also gives me basically the fat mass of the left arm and so on and so forth. We can see it by going into metabolism, and then we can see, okay, lean mass leg, for example. And then I can go into this and see my left leg has 11.7 kilogram of lean mass, and my right leg 11.8 kilograms. And this is, I think, now a little bit better made compared to the other one. So we can see that my fat mass percent of left leg compared to ideal is 47.8%. That's nice, but what does it mean? Let's check out the physical measurements. My height is 183, my waist circumference. Did I enter this manually or not? I think not. This is now nice that this is automatically calculated, because otherwise I would have, it also calculates apparently my neck circumference, my chest circumference, my left arm muscle circumference. I don't know how. I assume this is somehow basically from the in-body scale, maybe also from the camera measurements somehow. Would also be nice if this would be calculated. My waist circumference is actually The question is, how does one measure? I usually measure basically I try to basically increase my waist as much as I can, kind of from internal pressure, because then I can have kind of the most conservative measurement, and I do not try to pull it in. So it could actually be that my waist is actually, at least if I have not eaten food for a while, that low. But with the measurement in which I kind of put it out the most, it is usually a few centimeters higher. So here it was 85 centimeters the last time I entered this into here. We can also see that here it was 87, and so on and so forth. And my hip circumference here showed 100 centimeters, which is also fairly close, one has to admit, because actually it's 97. And of course here I do not have much muscles I can actually push out. And so I do not push my gut out here, as it is the hip. And so therefore this is actually 3 centimeter close. Basically, it could also have been today actually like 100 centimeters. Now it also calculates automatically the waist to hip ratio, which is also very nice. My neck circumference, let's actually see what the last measurement of my neck was. This is now the app from the first body fat scale I had, and in here there are also body measurements, and I use it to enter the body measurements, even though there are not really graphs. Sometimes there are, at least in the newer versions of the app, but the newer version of the app crashes. So let's take a look at the neck measurement, the last neck measurement I have. Let's see, where is it actually? Waist, chest, arm, neck. 36.4 centimeters. So I would say the 39 centimeters are accurate enough. So what is a huge hassle actually is getting these measurements, because, well, you have to measure them every week or so, or every month. But if you measure every month, then the question is, do you do it every 4 weeks? And then the weekday is not the same, and so every week seems to be kind of the best thing. But as of recently, I did this for now maybe a year or 1.5 years. I kind of stopped. I basically took only not neck, but waist and hip, because I did still enter them into the eGym app, but I, as of the last week, just stopped because it's just too much time I spent there. And so now, if I have them calculated somewhat automatically, this would be nice. Of course, now they aren't as accurate, and these are not actual values, but these are rather like basically estimates. But still, now I have them. I also have like the left arm muscle circumference, which is ridiculous, because my left arm muscle circumference, so basically my upper arm measurement, is, at least if it's relaxed, 38 centimeters. And I used to do in the beginning, I used to do them basically flexed, and then flexed it would actually be maybe 1 to 3 centimeters kind of bigger as you flex the bicep, mostly, maybe also the tricep a little bit, but these would actually also be kind of accurate. So this is actually something that is fairly surprising, that something like this is now integrated into this app. I actually previously searched for, like, if you do kind of a body scan, there are certain apps that do this, but then sometimes you have to pay for them. And having this all in one app seems to be very, very nice. It also pulls in my breathing rate from Garmin, my HRV from Garmin, my O2 saturation, my total sleep, which is ridiculous, because I, on my Garmin Fenix 7S Pro, have like ridiculous sleep hours. Let's see the data. So for example, today it measured like 24 hours of sleep. How can one just have such a terrible sleep algorithm? Now, deep sleep, light sleep, and so on are therefore also basically all of this data. I collected this for so many years, and for 2 years on the Garmin watch, and I recently sent in my Garmin Fenix 7S Pro, and now on the 6S Pro, it basically pollutes my data set. Now, I also entered a few of the blood markers I had, so these are basically the most recent one. Total cholesterol was a little bit high, but here is no interpretation in the app. Maybe they don't want to put too much emphasis basically on the medical side, as maybe they should not. So therefore, I just entered a few of these data points, and this makes it kind of the closest app that is actually also kind of, or the app that is the closest to Brian Johnson's Don't Die app, but does have the physical side, so the exercise side, actually way better covered than Brian Johnson's Don't Die app. And also, it's not a social media app, but it's just an app for basically improving my health, and not so much my health per se, but much more the physical side of my health. I also can log into these machines in my gym, even though I do not have a subscription for the BioAge machines. I can still log in with my band. A little bit unfortunate is that the VO2 max estimate from Garmin is not pulled in automatically, as this is kind of the thing I am doing mostly. I could do a VO2 max test on the treadmill or on maybe once a month. I could do them basically in the gym. Maybe I should, or I don't know. And then I could also see how it improves. But again, with the VO2 max testing, it should be ideally standardized. And because I do have a kind of a training plan that also adapts a little bit to me and my physical form, it would be very hard to standardize something like this. Maybe every Saturday or something like this. I don't know. Overall, it seems to be that this wellness age measurement is now something I probably will rely on in the future. And I actually was not aware as of today, basically until today, that I could actually get measurements of all of these. And I think it's also nice that they have kind of these scores for these different things, not different sub ages, because, well, at some point it kind of gets confusing, I think, to the average consumer. And a score like how many points out of 100 you have is maybe a little bit better compared to, okay, I'm already reduced to 18 years in terms of biological age or wellness age, and now what? I already have the best score, and now what can I do still further? And here with the 100, maybe there is a little bit of a different calculation going on. I also like that it's kind of these different colors, and then, well, I can kind of take a screenshot like this, and somewhat luckily, it also has these colors, which also the Garmin VO2 max estimates and also the Garmin Hill score and so on and so forth have. So these kind of typical performance colors, one could say, which one has to admit is a very nice move. And now I can kind of screenshot this and post this to social media and show off my very low wellness age of 24.